Half a month had passed since the apocalypse began. The water supply had completely stopped, though electricity was still functioning. Su Qing was preparing smaller meals for Duan Su each day, sneaking bites herself whenever he wasn't looking. One day, as I was happily enjoying a self-heating hot pot, a loud crash startled me. On the screen, Duan Su was dragging Su Qing from the dining room to the living room. I knew it. I barely eat anything each day, and yet our supplies are vanishing. You little thief, he shouted, slapping her to the floor. Su Qing, shocked that he would hit her, lunged at him in a frenzy. I sighed, watching them fight like two rabid dogs. Losing interest in their squabble, I moved to the window to survey the complex. Zombies were still swarming everywhere. With the water supply gone, some people had ventured out to search for resources. A few returned, but most met unfortunate fates. Just as I was about to go back to sleep, a roaring sound from a distant street caught my attention. A black jeep was heading towards the complex. 7 Could it be a rescue operation? I watched the vehicle intently. Although I had enough supplies to last comfortably through the apocalypse, I still hoped everything would end sooner. The jeep stopped at the gate, and 5 armed men got out, shooting at the approaching zombies with precision, indicating their experience. The commotion drew many low-level survivors to their windows, curious but also frightened as zombies flocked towards the noise. Apparently, the zombie count was more than they expected. A hefty man from the group got back in the jeep, beckoning his companions. Before he closed the door, he tossed something towards the lower floors. An explosion echoed, shattering glass below, diverting zombies en masse to the noise. I heard yelling from men, wailing from women, and the cries of children. My hand trembled as I realized they'd used other people as bait for the zombies. A horrifying, cruel act. Amidst the chaos, the jeep rammed through the fence of a ground floor yard. The men got out, and a tall, slim one forced open the door of a newlywed couple's home. The hefty man dragged the woman out while kicking the man back inside. Unwilling to witness more, I turned away. This group was criminal, using the apocalypse to fuel their malicious deeds. I could only hope they'd leave soon to avoid further trouble. Their ruckus had drawn even Duan Su and Su Qing's attention, silencing their squabble. They watched the horrifying scene unfold with understandable fear. Duan Su sneered at Su Qing. If you dare steal food again, I'll throw you out to feed the zombies too. Su Qing remained silent, staring out the window for a long time. It seemed like that group intended to settle in the community. Early the next morning, a few individuals with weapons escorted the girl out the door. They didn't drive or head outside the neighborhood. Instead, they pushed her into the building hallway. Quickly, a woman's screams and the roars of zombies filled the air, followed by a burst of gunfire. I instantly realized their purpose. They were searching for supplies. Before long, a window on the second floor opposite shattered, and a man was tossed out. I noticed the tall, thin man observed the situation for a moment. Seemingly relieved once the zombies swarmed toward the man struggling on the ground. He squinted and scanned my building, causing me to hold my breath. It looked like they weren't planning to leave until they'd stripped the entire complex bare. I began to panic. Although I lived on a higher floor, it was only a matter of time before they reached me through their thorough search. For now, all I could do was hope they'd slow down, giving me time to devise a plan. During the next 2 days, I no longer had the patience to watch Duan Su and Su Qing bicker. Instead, I focused on strategizing. They had unmistakably become a couple stuck in resentment, not exactly entertaining anymore. That group had already ransacked several homes, and Duan Su on the 5th floor was in growing peril. He was constantly tense, while Su Qing had been oddly silent for the past 2 days, clearly scheming something. 9 On their 5th day in the community, I woke up to a power outage. Fortunately, the solar power system kicked in, and nothing in the fridge was spoiled. Just like before, I stood by the window with my binoculars. Suddenly, a window on the 5th floor opened, and Su Qing popped her head out. She called to the group, "I still have supplies at my place. I just want you to take me with you. I can tell you which apartments are still occupied." This woman was trading the lives of all the survivors for her own safety. Upon hearing Su Qing's words, the group indeed headed for the 5th floor. Her voice had evidently woken Duan Su, who rushed to the window and yanked her back inside. "You treacherous woman! Are you trying to get me killed?" His shouts rang through the surveillance camera, which had enough backup power to show me the situation in their apartment. Su Qing stared fixedly at the door, and soon enough, it swung open. Several men entered, 2 of whom pulled the attacking Duan Su away from Su Qing, who was cursing relentlessly. Su Qing stood up from the ground, a wild grin on her face. Duan Su, I've had enough of you. You useless coward, making me suffer before the apocalypse, and now we can't even fill our stomachs because of you. You're only fit to feed the zombies. With that, she looked expectantly at the man restraining Duan Su, her body leaning into him. The man on the left immediately wrapped his arm around her, signaling his companions to throw Duan Su out the window. With a heavy thud, Duan Su hit the ground, blood streaming from his mouth. The blood seemed to agitate the zombies. Even though Duan Su was nearly turning into one of them, they still swarmed him ferociously. In the end, Duan Su didn't fully transform into a zombie. Instead, he was torn apart into gruesome pieces, a scene so graphic it was nauseating. Watching this unfold, I felt not the slightest bit of emotion. Duan Su's demise didn't sadden me. If anything, I was simply not glad it happened. The zombies' unusual behavior, though, piqued my interest. I had been observing them closely. Zombies determine their targets based on sound and the scent of human presence. However, it seemed that fresh blood could drive them into a frenzy much more quickly. The addition of Su Qing to the group greatly sped up their search for supplies. For the past few nights, I hadn't been able to sleep soundly, frequently dreaming of them forcefully breaking into my place with explosives. In my previous life, I had the horrendous experience of dying at the hands of zombies, and I was determined never to relive that nightmare. Tomorrow, they planned to start searching the building next to mine. At their current pace, they would reach my building in no more than 2 days. Even though I had reinforced the doors and windows, the stronger they were, the more suspicious it seemed that someone was home if discovered. These desperados definitely wouldn't leave me alone if they realized this. Besides, that skinny guy in the group seemed to be a master at picking locks. I wasn't sure if the upgraded security door could withstand him. On the 25th day since the apocalypse began, I watched the group leave and made a bold decision. Digging out the drone I had bought but never used, I went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. Pudding, my cat, followed closely, tilting its head curiously at my actions. I placed the knife back on the table and filled Pudding's bowl with cat food and a can. As expected, with food in sight, Pudding forgot all about me and busied itself with eating. Bracing myself, I cut a line across my left palm with the knife. The sharp pain spread, but there was no time for hesitation. I smeared as much blood as possible onto some old clothes nearby. After bandaging my hand, I tore the blood-stained clothes into strips and tied them to the drone's wings. Since zombies were particularly sensitive to the smell of blood, I planned to lure them toward those people using my blood. Quietly, I opened a crack in the window and slipped the drone outside. With trembling hands, I navigated the drone to hover above the wandering zombies, watching the live feed intently. Initially, the zombies didn't react, so I lowered the drone just enough to brush their heads. The dangling strips carried the scent of blood, and my left hand throbbed faintly. Zombies gradually began to move and soon gathered around the drone. I switched to my binoculars, noting the group's leisurely activity at the entrance, and then piloted the drone in their direction. Drawn by the scent of blood, the zombies shuffled towards them. The group didn't notice anything was amiss at first. It wasn't until the drone got closer that they realized something was wrong. The fat man shouted, "Watch out," and pulled out a gun, shooting the drone out of the sky. The live feed flickered for a few seconds before going completely black. It was over. 11 gunshots and curses echoed from downstairs, prompting me to drop the remote and grab my binoculars. This was my only chance. If this risky move didn't drive them away for good, they'd only search the neighborhood even more aggressively once they recovered, and then I truly would have no hope. With the drone already taken down, all I could do was hope the zombies posed enough of a threat. I had drawn nearly all the zombies in the neighborhood around them. The group fought and retreated, until one of them, the fat man, was tackled by a zombie. Damn. He shot the zombie's head off, only to turn and see his companions already in the jeep. Clearly panicked, he shouted, "You can't leave me behind." But all he received in response was the barrel of his companion's gun. Su Qing, sitting in the back, was even more brazen. "You're infected. You want to join us and get us all killed?" Caught in a standoff, the fat man resignedly lowered his gun, as those in the jeep fired at the zombies while driving away. The combined noise of the jeep and gunfire attracted all the zombies in the building's hallways outside. Watching the swarm move toward the jeep, I felt relief. Whether they managed to escape or not, they no longer posed a threat to me. But the following scene caught me by surprise. As the jeep neared the exit of the complex, the door suddenly swung open. Su Qing was shoved out, a knife buried in her chest. The scent of fresh blood drove the zombies into a frenzy, encircling her. Even until her death, Su Qing wore a face of utter disbelief. Her eyes wide open. I felt a sense of satisfaction. She truly reaped what she sowed. The group never returned after that. On day 50 after the zombie outbreak, military helicopters roared over our community, accompanied by loudspeaker broadcasts and airdrop supplies. Please don't lose hope. The party and the nation will not forget you. We are taking action, and we believe that soon we will overcome this disaster. I heard cheers from the other survivors in the community, and I eagerly picked up Pudding, who was still sleeping soundly. Every 2 weeks thereafter, the community received regular airdrops of supplies. Meanwhile, the zombies were gradually being eliminated by military forces conducting missions in the area. On day 182 after the outbreak, a zombie vaccine was finally developed. While it couldn't reverse zombification for the already turned, it prevented normal humans from becoming zombies. Across cities large and small, zombies were almost entirely gone from the streets. Those vaccinated wore expressions of survival joy and engaged in various post-disaster reconstruction efforts. As for me, having witnessed the demise of those who brought it upon themselves, I returned to normal life. Occasionally reflecting on the experiences of my previous life felt like remembering a dream. Having a second chance at life means cherishing the present even more, doesn't it?